Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. In a moment, we're going to be continuing with our series of Speaking Better, but first of all, I just want to bring you a few bits of news from around the UK. One of the biggest bits of news is about Blackpool Tower. Now, I don't know if you know this, but in the north of England, we have a fake Eiffel Tower. That's right, we built a complete replica of the Eiffel Tower in the north of England. It looks like the Eiffel Tower. It's perhaps a little bit smaller, and it's very famous amongst tourists. Now, in the old days, when people from the UK used to go on holiday in the UK, Blackpool was very famous. In the days when Britain was very industrial, workers were able to go to Blackpool for cheap holidays. And there were many places around Blackpool which hosted live entertainment. There's a ballroom underneath Blackpool Tower, and the pier, that's the platform that sticks out into the ocean that you can walk over. At the end of those piers, you can often find other ballrooms, dance halls, and public bars. Now, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when British people started to travel to other countries, Blackpool was left behind. And now it's one of the most impoverished places in the UK. It's so impoverished that if you go there, you might see lots of boarded up buildings, and the place looks rather forgotten. It needs a little bit of care. These days, people would describe it as a relic. It's really trashy. It's a place where people go to get very drunk very quickly. It's full of cheap hotels, but there's nothing really to see there anymore. It has a few very famous ballrooms, and there's still things happen there, but it's nothing like what it was. It's a very, very cheap place, and standing right in the middle of it is this huge tower called Blackpool Tower. Now, I've painted that kind of a grim picture for you there. But anyway, last night there were reports that Blackpool Tower was on fire. People called the fire brigades, and 6 fire trucks, we call them fire engines, arrived at Blackpool Tower to put out the blaze. Very quickly, however, they realized that there was no fire. It was simply orange netting or some kind of orange material that was blowing in the strong wind that looked like flames. So it really was what we would call a false alarm. If you are coming to the UK and you're looking for a really, really cheap, trashy place to go, Blackpool is definitely on the list. There's the Blackpool Tower Ballroom, where people still go dancing. There's still the streets there, which haven't changed in many, many years, but everywhere's kind of closed. You can still get a good night out there. There's many nice restaurants, but the poverty there compared to London is very, very noticeable. And although there's some lovely hotels, there's also others which aren't quite so nice. So it's just something for you to think about. Perhaps you want to go there for a day if you happen to be in the Manchester area. Another bit of news today that's in our newspapers is apparently we have a prison in the UK which is so nice that people are committing crimes to get in there. It's a women's prison. It's in an area of the UK called Cheshire. And it is said that it's so pleasant, especially over the festive periods, that criminals, they actually commit crimes so that they can get in there for Christmas. It's huge. They even give gifts to each other. And what else does it say here? Yeah, it's a huge building that was built in Edwardian times. So that'll be the period just after Queen Victoria. They can watch TV on a large communal TV. They have TVs in their rooms. And they also have lovely, delicious Christmas dinners. What else is it saying here? Yeah, apparently, in the weeks before Christmas, inmates, that's the prisoners, they sing Christmas songs. Christmas songs, we call them Christmas carols, if it's the traditional ones, outside the prison. And staff bring in wrapping paper so they can exchange gifts. They're allowed to decorate the place. And there's even deliveries of makeup and beautiful things to allow them to look after themselves, like Avon products, they apparently deliver there. They're free to move around in the prison at Christmas time. They have their own kitchen and dining rooms. It's basically just a nice place to be. There's people there who refuse to leave and are saying, "Don't let me out," and others who apparently are looking to get back. It's a different environment, apparently, from other prisons. And it says here, at Christmas, a lot of them have nobody. Well, it's not only prisoners. A lot of people are very alone at Christmas. And some of the ex-prisoners deliberately breach their licenses so that they'll have a bed to go back to at Christmas time because they have friends still in there. And of course, many British people think that it should be closed down because prison is supposed to be a place of punishment, not a free holiday hotel. I don't agree with that. I think taking away someone's freedom is punishment enough. Why shouldn't a prisoner be allowed to watch TV, especially at Christmas time? I mean, they've nothing else to do. Just being locked up is a big enough punishment, I guess. Anyway, they should be reformed, not punished. This whole idea of locking people up for serious crimes, unless, of course, they're a danger to the public, this whole system needs looking at. And I'm sure in the future, we'll be moving away from this Victorian idea of just locking people up because they've done something wrong. It seems crazy. Why do it? I mean, I understand if the person is dangerous, but we already have open prisons. These are prisons where prisoners are allowed to go out, go to work, but they must return to the prison in the evening. So I'm guessing that that is going to be the way forwards. And also, it's not very nice if you're a prisoner. People judge you and think you're inhuman, even though you've paid for your crime, I know that there's a local lady here who made a mistake back in the 1960s. She went to prison for, I think, a few years, and people still look at her and judge her and point the finger and say, oh, bad woman. But it was a long, long time ago, and people have to get on with their lives. We can't keep judging others. But I don't know. It seems like this news report is pushing this argument that prisons should be tough places and shouldn't be allowed luxury. But yeah, if you lock someone in a room, surely that's punishment enough, is it not? Especially for 20 or 30 years. Anyway, let's move on because we want to talk a little bit about speaking better. Today, we're going to talk about mouth movements. And I want you just to take your finger and hold your top lip. Just place it under your nose to stop that part of your mouth moving. And I'd like you to hold that in place and speak with the bottom part of your mouth. Okay, so this will create the effect of having a stiff upper lip and you pull down the bottom parts like a fish. Okay, not pulling your mouth from side to side, but just pulling it down. Okay, and you'll see that that gives perfect vowel sounds. Okay, so you just hold the top parts of your lip with your finger, just lay it across under your nose and begin to speak by pulling your chin and the bottom part of your mouth down. Okay, you don't want to be moving your mouth horizontally, you want to be moving it vertically, just pulling it down. Okay, and that'll give you the perfect vowel sounds. Okay, now it's just to practice with so you can hear how it changes how you speak, because of course with time you need to be not holding it with your finger, but just having a habit of speaking only with the bottom parts of your mouth. Okay, so just pull your bottom part down. And this is what our late Queen used to call the stiff upper lip. Okay, it doesn't move and you speak confidently with the bottom parts. Now, just to let you know that when you do these things, your sounds, of course, will automatically change. Now, that's very good, of course, but I had a student this week. Well, I should say this year. It certainly wasn't this week. I'm not working this week. So I had a student over the period of the last year, and he wanted to change his accent very quickly. So he started doing this. He started holding the top part of his lip and speaking with the bottom parts. And he immediately went to work and started speaking like that with his colleagues. And of course, his colleagues were unprepared. They weren't ready to hear him speaking that way. So they immediately laughed at him and said, "Why are you speaking like an Englishman? It doesn't sound right. That's not your usual voice." And he said, "But I'm only imitating how teacher Joseph sounds." And they said, "Yeah, but we like the person we have. We don't want to hear you impersonating an English teacher. We like the way you speak, so please continue to speak the way you normally do." And this kind of tribal attitude often happens if you suddenly change how you speak. So let's say, for example, you go on a speaking course and you know everything that you have to do, holding your mouth in place and everything else. you might find a lot of resistance as to how you're speaking, especially if you're in an environment where there's no native speakers. It's a bit like if you go for plastic surgery. Imagine that you have your eyes Botoxed, you have your nose fixed, you have your mouth tightened, and you have other bits of your body realigned. When you walk in, do you think people are going to see you as the same person? You will definitely spark a debate about whether they like you or not. And some people, it'll take them a little while to really get used to you. And of course, we're all human. So the first thing they will do is say what they don't like rather than what they do like. It's very unlikely they're going to affirm you because they'll be jealous. They're not going to appreciate the fact that you're moving forward with your image and with your life. So it's important that you introduce changes either gradually, slowly, or warn people in advance what's happening. Because if you suddenly change overnight, you could run into some big problems, especially if you suddenly sound better than your boss does or your team does. They're not going to get it because there's all kinds of cultural things which perhaps simply may not work. For example, British people, when we're talking to others, we often smile on the telephone, with people at work. And if you come from a very depressed looking kind of atmosphere, that kind of thing may appear fake. So even though it's good for native speakers, it might not be so good for your local community of friends or colleagues. So you need to be very, very careful how you bring in the new you. When it comes to speaking better, I really would advise you to take it slowly. Do it over 1 month and get your colleagues buy-in. Buy-in means get your colleagues prepared and ready and acceptance of you. If you don't have that, maybe you should begin your new English voice just very slowly. Don't use it all the time. Save it for when you're talking to native speakers. And don't be afraid to ask directly what other people think of it, and be okay with criticism. So that's just some advice if you're thinking of changing how you speak. But for most of you, your accent will be determined by the TV shows that you're watching. And as long as you're speaking fairly fast and using intonation, it shouldn't be a big thing. Yesterday I was talking about intonation, and I think of all the things you can do to improve your speaking, intonation would be the easiest and the quickest. All you have to do in a sentence is just take one word and put it up. For example, the weather today is very nice and it will rain later. All you have to do is just take the middle word. The weather today is very nice and it will rain later. So I raised 2 words there. So you see how easy it is? The weather today is very nice and it will rain later. It's very easy to use intonation to create and soften the hardest of accents. So if you're in any doubt, begin with intonation and work on to these other points, just to slowly let your colleagues aware that your speaking is changing. If you don't do that, there's a danger, especially if it's so sudden, that they think that you're just imitating somebody. And for example, imitating my voice is fine. But remember, if you change your voice overnight to a different one, all you're doing is taking my voice. Not everyone speaks like me, So you need to find your own wings to fly with instead of using mine. But in the interim, it's perfectly okay, especially when you're shadowing, to use a voice that you trust. Right, the time has gone, so I hope you found this helpful, and let's talk again soon. See you. Bye.